Hey everyone, it's Reese, aka RBS here. I'll start off by saying that this is my first time doing any kind of commentary on a video like this, so apologies for any mess ups or mistakes or anything like that. This is a pretty big achievement for me and something I've been working towards for a bit of time now, so I thought I may as well make a video out of it, showing the journey towards it. I'll get straight to the point. I now hold all 5 platform traditional ruleset Gfred world records, so that's PS5, PS4, the Xbox Series consoles, Xbox One and PC. Some of you may know that I've already held the PS5 and Xbox Series records for a couple of months now, and you're seeing some highlights of those in the background at the moment. Initially, that's all I planned on going for record-wise. Vadlith became the first person to hold all 5 records at once in June, which obviously is a massive achievement. He didn't hold on to them for long though, which we'll come on to later, but when that got taken away, I also took my opportunity to get the PS5 and Xbox Series records. But as I started playing on PC more often, mainly via the weekly 8th Gear and Apex Gfreds, the idea of having the PC record started to get more appealing. At that point, if I managed to achieve that as well, then that would only leave the PS4 and Xbox One records, so you can kind of see where that's going. So for the PS5 record, I initially took that back in June with a 1619.996, which beat Vadlith's 1627.352, which he'd set earlier that month to get all 5 records himself. I was honestly pretty happy with that run. But at the start of July, Vinny then came along and beat my PS5 record by less than a second with a 1619.128. I remember seeing the video go live for that record just as I was about to eat my dinner, and I knew I was going to have to try and take it back. So after finishing eating, I loaded up a Gfred, and literally on my first run, I got a 9F at the highway, which, for those who aren't aware, is by far the fastest and best car for Gfred records. Honestly, it was a super clean run. I got to the Chiliad checkpoint at 11:02, which is right on world record pace for the current gen consoles, but then coming down Chiliad, I hit the wrong part of the slope and the car goes up on its side. I slide into some trees and roll over. I thought the run was dead at this point, but as a last attempt to save the run, I thought I'd go for the half send to try and maybe recover it. For anyone that doesn't know, the half send is basically a huge jump you can do about halfway down Chiliad that is a few seconds faster than the normal safe route down Chiliad, but it's pretty difficult to land. It's very easy to go too far left or too far right, or not carry enough speed, or carry too much. There's a very specific area on the side of Chiliad that you want to land on that allows the car to settle and lets you slow down in time to jump off the train tracks. Now up to this point, I didn't do the half send in my record attempts. I had done it a few times to practice, but generally I didn't attempt it because I felt it killed more runs than it was worth. If you got it wrong, you at best lost time compared to the safe route, or at worst you could blow up the car or damage it enough where it wouldn't handle jumps properly for the second half of the run, and the run would basically be dead. So I go for the half send, and I pretty much nail it. I land on the exact patch of Chiliad you want to land on, maybe a little further down than ideal, but I got it just about slowed down and the run was back on. From then on, I had a pretty clean run, aside from clipping one of the trees on the transitions after the observatory, which slowed me down a little. But yeah, great Hail Mary, and I set a 1618.844, which beat Vinny's time by 0.3 of a second, literally the day after he posted his record. And that's where that record stands at the moment. On to the Xbox Series record, so that's the one for the Series X or S. And this one isn't quite as good as the PS5 record, mainly because the previous record was a 1654 by Vadlith that was set back in November 2022. So I knew I had a bit of leeway for a not so perfect run to still take the record here. There isn't as much of a community running Gfreds on Xbox, so the times haven't been pushed down as low as they have on PlayStation. It's a pretty clean run that I get here, but generally just not as fast as the PS5 record, as I'm playing it quite safe on some of the transitions, just to try and make sure that I get the run completed. So I end up with a 1626.823. Definitely a good time still, but there's still time on the table there. Now we move on to the new records that I've taken, and we'll start with the old gen, PS4 and Xbox One. These were absolute hell, honestly. After spending so much time now playing on the current gen consoles or PC at 60 FPS, it's honestly horrible going back to 30 FPS on old gen. It completely throws off your muscle memory, the input lag is higher, so things like riding the train tracks are much more difficult, and just generally it's a much worse experience. That's also exacerbated by the fact that PS4 times are always slower than current gen consoles due to the lower frame rate. Since 2022, Frozenhunt has been the person to beat on PS4. Vadlith has taken the record off him a couple of times, most notably in June as part of him taking and holding all 5 records at the same time. But then Frozen took it back the next day with a 16:37. My run to take the record here was a pretty clean run, apart from a couple of sketchy moments. The first of which coming off the airport car park, where I clipped the wall slightly and ended up doing a nice 360 off the car park. Definitely a bit of a time loss there, but I mean, it looks cool. And the second one was right at the end of the run, on the final transition after the observatory going down to Fort Zancudo, where I very narrowly avoid hitting the floor upside down, which would have most likely blown the car up and killed the run. I do lose a bit of time from those 2 moments together, as well as not taking the half send on this run, and also just generally not being as fast and consistent on the 30 FPS of the old gen consoles. Just to add as well, the fastest parachute strategy is a bit different on the old gen consoles, where you need to swing side to side to keep your speed up, but it's not as easy to get the timing right, especially when you're so used to the strat on PS5. But I end up setting a 16:35.828, which beats Frozen's time by just over a second. Next is Xbox One, and this is a very similar situation to the Xbox Series record. With the less active Gfred speedrunning community on Xbox, this record was also actually a 16:54 by Vadlith, and that was set in August 2022. I knew I could beat that because I'd obviously just gone significantly faster than that on PS4, and the PS4 and Xbox One records are kind of the platforms are basically identical, so the times theoretically should be around about the same. So I started going for the Xbox One record right after getting the PS4 record. It's generally a clean run, apart from half spinning when I jump off the train tracks after Chiliad, and then clipping the tree on the final observatory transition down to Fort Zancudo, which kind of nosedived me into the floor. But this run was generally played a little safer, like the Xbox Series record, and I ended up with a 16:40.602. So finally, we move on to the big one, PC. This ended up becoming a bit more of a journey for me than I expected. The time to beat was Vadlith's 16-minute 12.188, which he set as part of him taking all 5 records. You'll notice that the PC record is a bit faster than even the current gen PS5 and Xbox Series records. This is because the PC version of GTA always runs faster, despite us locking it to 60 FPS for records. Curb boosts making the car go faster is the main difference, but also bushes affect the car less, so you can take some more aggressive lines and things like that. So I'm sat doing runs, and honestly it feels like I'm never getting an INF at the highway. I don't know what it is, but I know Vadlith has experienced this as well. For some reason, PC and the old gen consoles seem to have much worse spawn rates for 9Fs at the highway compared to current gen consoles. Like, it's already very bad RNG at the start of the run as it is, but it just feels so much worse on these platforms. You can literally spend hours starting a run, getting to the highway and resetting because there's no 9F spawn. But finally, I get on a good run here, and to be honest, this is a really clean run. The only major time loss was a slide just after the jump across the river before getting onto the train tracks to go to Chiliad. I didn't do the half send on this run, and by the end I end up setting a 16:06.326, beating the previous record by 6 seconds. Now, of course, initially I was buzzing. I'd done it. I'd got the PC record. But slowly something occurred to me and the buzz started to fade away a little bit. Some of you might have already started to realise it as well, but after that run with the time loss on the river jump and not doing the half send, I started to wonder, is a Sub-16 Gfred possible? Now, I'm very much a perfectionist which I think is kind of an inherent trait to anybody that gets into any kind of speedrunning. I'll set an amazing world record run and I'll still be annoyed about a 1 second time loss here or there that could have made it faster. So once that thought about a sub-16 was in my head, I just couldn't let go of it. I had to set myself a new goal. Be the first person ever to set a sub-16 traditional Gfred. So I carried on attempting runs, constantly coming up against the horrible 9F RNG. I got one a few times, but ended up losing the runs due to mistakes or bad traffic. I don't even want to know how many hours I spent just running to the highway over and over again. But then I got on the run you're seeing now, and I'm pretty confident this is the single best run I have ever put together. There isn't a single major time loss in this run. I maybe lose a second on the top of Gilead from clipping a rock on the jump down from the checkpoint, but other than that, it's spotless. I even land an unbelievable half send where I go off the jump actually too far to the right, and I'm heading straight for 2 trees, but as I land, I angle my car in such a way that I hit one of the trees side on. It bounces me off to the left, slows me down a bit as well, and perfectly lines me up to jump onto the train tracks. After that, I was really thinking, this is it. This is the sub-16 run. The rest of the run is perfect as well. All of the transitions are awesome. I get to the Hail Mary and I get loads of height, so now it's just down to the parachute to the checkpoint. As I'm closing in on the checkpoint after doing my last swoop, I'm just staring at the timer praying to see it stop before it hits 16 minutes. But unfortunately, it doesn't. I realise as I'm closing in on the island that I'm going to miss out on it, and my heart just sinks. I'd just beaten my previous record by 3 seconds, but all I was feeling was disappointment. If that run couldn't get a sub-16, then what would it take? I was still determined to make sub-16 happen, so I started thinking of the best ways to make it happen. I was pretty confident I'd already optimised pretty much everything in the run. You're always going to have a few seconds variation here or there due to RNG, and obviously the length of the run as well. There's always just going to be a bit of time given or lost here or there, but for the most part I genuinely didn't think there was any more time in that run. That is aside from the full send. You've seen me do the half send a couple of times in this video, but the full send adds an extra couple of jumps right off the top of Gilead. It's extremely hard to pull off, even more so than the half send. I've never successfully pulled one off, even when practicing, and only a few people have. You're seeing a video just now from Birdlith showing it off. Honestly, I didn't like the chances of pulling that off in a run. This was definitely a last resort option for me, so I started looking elsewhere to see if I could find any time. One thing you may have noticed about the start of these Gfred runs is that when you get to the highway, the 9F can be in a few different places. Usually you need to run for a bit to get it, sometimes past 2 or 3 or sometimes more AI cars. It can also spawn in the left lane or the right lane as well. This 9F placement can cost quite a bit of time very early in the run, but up until now, that time has always been outweighed by possible time saves elsewhere in the run, which still made it worth generally going for a run, even if the car spawned late. But now, that time save was important. On my 1603 run, the 9F spawned as the second car on the highway, in the right-hand lane. Once I got in the car and the wheels started turning, the timer was at 2:55.7. On the previous 1606 run, the 9F spawned as the first car on the highway in the left-hand lane, with a wheel spin time of 2 minutes 51.5, so a 4-second difference. If I'd gotten the 9F spawn from the 1606 run in the 1603 run, it would have been enough for sub-16. So that was it. Without needing to resort to the extremely low percentage full send, that was my only option. Drive like I just did, or even better if possible, but with the early 9F spawn. So I started runs again, but this time I was resetting runs if the first car on the highway wasn't a 9F. Then this happened. The dream 9F spawn. it was actually an even earlier spawn than the 1606 run, with a wheel spin time of 2 minutes 50.5, so that's 5 seconds faster than the 1603 run. It took me hours of running to the highway over and over again to get this spawn. If Sub-16 was going to happen, it needed to be now. I just needed to drive like I did last time. The first half of the run was amazing, and I ended up hitting the Chiliad checkpoint at 10 minutes 45 seconds. I was still 5 seconds up on my 1603 run, so I hadn't lost any time. Now it was time for the half send. Not ideal, but also not as bad as it could have been. I was slightly too slow going over the jump, which meant I clipped the rocks just before the ideal landing location and flipped the car completely over. Somehow it landed back on all 4 wheels, but now I'm sliding backwards and all 4 wheels end up off the ground. I hold the handbrake and try my best to use the mid-air car control mechanic to turn the car to face the right way. I get about a quarter of a turn done before I land on the ground again. Luckily, because I'm on grass, the car carries on rotating a bit with a bit of a slide, which is just enough to hit the last tree dead on and come to a stop. I didn't realise it at the time, but by the time I enter the train tunnel, I haven't actually lost any time from that half send. I'm still 5 seconds up on the 1603 run. I think that's mainly because I wasn't able to actually brake properly on this run. The tree did it all for me instantly at the bottom, so the time I lost by hitting the tree and then getting going again was actually outweighed by needing to actively slow down in the previous run. By the time I get to the observatory checkpoint, I've actually extended that gap by a second, so I'm now 6 seconds ahead of my 1603 run. However, unfortunately, I get a couple of unfortunate traffic spawns on the way to Zancudo, which do cost me a bit of time. The rest of my transitions are clean, but by the time I'm leaving Zancudo, I'm now just under 3 seconds ahead of my 1603. I'm on course to just miss out on the Sub-16. My only chance is to somehow make up some time with a really good Hail Mary and really good parachuting, which were already really strong in my 1603 run. By the time I hit the cliff for the Hail Mary, I've actually pulled slightly back ahead again, so I'm now just over 3 seconds ahead, but that's still not quite enough. I get great height on the Hail Mary and a nice big first swoop on the parachute. As I get about halfway, I go for another big swoop to try and build up as much speed as possible. Now all I can do is just watch the timer and hope. And there we go, I did it, a 15:58.633 Sub-16. Somehow my Hail Mary and parachuting were so good that I pulled out an extra second and a half just on the parachute, finishing 4.83 seconds ahead of the 1603 run. Now the perfectionist in me begrudges the scruffy half send and the bad traffic spawns on the way to Zancudo. The bad traffic spawns in particular mean there's at least another 3 seconds or so on the table, and that's before factoring in doing a full send. However, with the extremely rare early 9F spawn, for the most part very clean driving, and a yes scruffy but still very fast half send, I'm really happy with this run, and it's obviously achieved the goal I set myself of being the first person to set a sub 16 minute traditional Gfred. So yeah, there's a little bit of a run through of the journey to me now holding all 5 platform traditional Gfred world records. I will be uploading the full unedited runs for the Xbox One, PS4 and PC records over the next few days. The PS5 and Xbox Series runs are already on my channel. I just felt it was worth doing a single video to announce all of them, and also showcase what led up to it, especially with that PC record, because that was very much a struggle once I'd set myself that goal of going sub-16. I hope you all enjoyed the video. All of the standard stuff, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and also let me know in the comments what you think about the runs, and also how I did for my first attempt at any kind of commentary. I'm not sure if it's something I'll do again, but if you guys enjoy it, then maybe I will. So yeah, see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.